Men fall in love faster than women do. Men fall in love more often than women do. Men are 2.5 times more likely to kill themselves when a relationship is over. It's exactly the same brain circuitry in men as women, but men just fall faster because they're so visual.
Look into his eyes. They're the eyes of a man obsessed by sex. Eyes that mock our sacred institutions. Bedroom eyes, they call them in a bygone day.
You're listening to Sex with Emily. I'm Dr. Emily, and I'm here to help you prioritize your pleasure and liberate the conversation around sex. On today's Best of episode, I'm joined by renowned biological anthropologist and author of Anatomy of Love and so many other great books, Dr. Helen Fisher. We discuss so many things in this episode that your brain just might explode. All the questions you might be having about relationships, like is love at first sight possible? How our personality traits shape our attraction to others. And we're going to give you a personality test you can take so you can figure out which personalities you match with. We also talk about the way our biology influences who we fall in love with, the stages of rejection, the right time to define a relationship. We talk about the brain systems that are actually responsible for different kinds of love. Dr. Fisher also shares studies of why you fall in love with one person rather than another. Do you ever think about that? Like, why am I attracted to these kind of people? We also talk about the best times to marry, why orgasms create connection, how you can put some space in your togetherness. We've all been spending a little bit too much time together, right? All good relationships need space. Also, why casual sex isn't really casual. All right, intentions with Emily. For each episode, join me in setting an intention. What do you want to get out of this episode? I set one in every episode, and my intention simply was to get Dr. Helen Fisher here to break down love, attachment, and sex. I can't wait to hear from you of what you think of this episode. And remember, if you want to ask me questions, call my brand new hotline, 559-TALK-SEX. or 559-825-5739. Just leave me your questions or message me at sexwithemily.com/assemily. Always include your name, your gender identity, location, and age, and how you listen to the show. All right, everybody, enjoy this special episode. Dr. Helen Fisher, PhD, is one of America's most prominent anthropologists and senior research fellow at the Kinsey Institute. She's conducted extensive research, written 6 books on the evolution and future of human sex, love, marriage, gender differences in the brain, and how your personality style shapes who you are. She's currently using her knowledge of brain chemistry to discuss the neuroscience of team building, business leadership, and innovation. I've been inspired by Helen Fisher for so many years. I remember when I was starting out doing my show, a long time ago, I was listening to an interview with her on the radio, and I was just stopped my car in the middle of the road and started taking notes. Well, I'm so excited she's joining us today. Welcome to the show, Dr. Helen Fisher. Can we just talk about, to break down to my listeners, like the 3 basics of love? And
right.
I know you've talked about this for years, and then we're going to build upon this, but the lust, romantic attraction, attachment.
Yeah, I was walking actually in a park in New York City several years ago, and it suddenly occurred to me, I wonder if we've evolved 3 distinctly different brain systems for mating and reproduction. One is the sex drive, second is feelings of intense romantic love, and the third is feelings of deep attachment. And that all kinds of love, is some combination of those 3. Now, you're not going to be in love with your mother.
Right.
You can just feel deeply attached to your mother. You're not going to want to have sex with your mother, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be all different kinds of combinations that we make. But I think that these 3 basic brain systems evolved, and they evolved for different reasons. I think the sex drive evolved to get you out there looking for a whole range of partners. You can have sex with somebody you're not in love with. I think romantic love evolved to enable you to focus your mating energy on just one at a time and start the mating process. And I think this feelings of deep attachment evolved to enable you to stick with this person at least long enough to raise a child together as a team. So these things do different jobs. We feel attachment to all kinds of people. What's interesting is when I looked into the brain, romantic love can be triggered instantly. It's like a brain system like the fear system. You can be scared instantly, and you can fall in love
like
instantly.
Like the love at first sight.
Right.
But isn't it more lust at first sight?
I think it's often love at first sight. I do all these studies with Match.
Yes, I know. Let's talk about all your studies.
And one of the questions was, do you believe in love at first sight? Not sex at first sight or lust at first sight, but love at first sight. And over 50% of both men and women said yes. And when I asked the question, has it ever happened to you? I think it's something like 40% of men had said yes, and I think 29% of women or 30% of women had said yes. But you have to be ready for it. I mean, as you grow up, you evolve what I call a love map, an unconscious list of what you're looking for in a partner. And then suddenly the time is right. You're ready to fall in love. And you see somebody who fits within that love map, even somewhat, and they smile at you and they laugh with you, or they crack a joke, and instantly you can trigger that brain circuitry for romantic love and fall madly in love. Not just lust, but in love. And these three brain systems, a lot of people get them mixed up. They feel that lust comes first, and then romantic love, and then feelings of attachment. But these are brain systems. They can operate in any combination. I mean, you have some wonderful friend at school or at work, and it's just a nice attachment, and you feel deeply attached. And then suddenly you're free, they're free, and boom, you can feel romantic love. Then you can feel the sex drive. Or you can fall in love first, and then suddenly everything, once you fall in love with somebody, everything becomes sexual about them.
What if you get stuck, though, in one of these phases? What if you're only in the lust phase? Aren't there people who can't move on or can't attach?
Right. I think that different times of life, we're looking for different kinds of things. I mean, I know a guy right now who just really wants to sleep around. That's what he wants
really
to do.
Does,
he just he does not want any kind of attachment. He had a long attachment to somebody, and he's done with that for the moment. Well, he'll probably get back to it. We'll see. And then there's some people, I call them romance junkies, and they need that thrill, that dopamine high, the elation, the giddiness, the euphoria, the romance. And so as that begins to settle down a bit into a deep attachment, then they'll feel claustrophobic and want to move on. And then there's people, I call them attachment junkies, that can't leave a bad partnership because they're stuck. They have that sense of attachment even if it's quite abusive. So actually, I think that all three of these brain systems can be perfectly wonderful, and all of them can be perfectly horrible. I mean, I think you can have a real sex addiction, a real romance addiction, or a real attachment addiction. But when they're working well, and when you've found all three in the same person, that's a beautiful addiction.
It is, right, exactly. How is this a change? I mean, because this was huge research that you did. It's made a huge impact. And what do you see has been one of the biggest impacts it's had on the way people think about love and attachment, or at least what could people learn from this now? How could they learn about themselves and the way they date and the way they love?
I think my recent research is probably the most important for that. It's on personality. It's nice to know about these three brain systems.
Right.
It's nice to know what's happening to you.
Right.
And it's nice to think a little bit clearly about it and, stay away from things that don't work. I mean, I said to a man last night, I was at this gala and he said, well, so-and-so, and he broke up. And I said, well, stay broken up. She's not the right person for you.
You can just tell.
Oh, I've known their saga for several months, and there's just too much drama.
Right.
And they're both wonderful people, but they're not right for each other right now, and maybe they never will be. So
your person, I love we took the personality quiz.
Oh, you did? Oh, how
yes.
wonderful! I bet you're just like me.
I don't know what I'm.
Estrogen
Explorer.
Yeah, explorer, negotiator.
Yeah, explorer, negotiate. Absolutely, yes. And I knew without even just reading the dopamine. I'm like, yes, I am dopamine.
Yeah.
I wanted to clarify this part. We're going to get into the personality test that Helen Fisher created, but I wanted to explain it to you here so it all makes sense. So her personality quiz is essentially talks about the way you express 4 broad styles of thinking and behaving. And each one of these behaviors is associated with our 4 basic brain systems: dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, and estrogen system. So she took those systems, and there are 4 personality types: the explorer, the builder, the director, and the negotiator. And we're a combination of all of these 4 traits, but we express some more than others. So when you take this quiz, you might score equally on 2 or sometimes 3, but we tend to, favor 1 or 2. But to break it down for you, so explorers have more of the traits linked with the dopamine system. They're curious, creative, spontaneous, energetic, daring, risk-taking. Builders express more of the traits linked with serotonin system. They're more traditional, conventional, cautious, but not scared. They observe social norms. They follow the rules. They respect authority. They like making plans and schedules. Then we have the directors. And directors have more traits linked with testosterone. These people tend to be analytical, logical, direct, decisive, skeptical, tough-minded, emotionally contained. Then we have the negotiators. They have more of the traits in the estrogen system: holistic, contextual, long-term and imaginative thinkers. They're good at reading postures, gestures, facial expressions, tone of voice. So you can take the quiz yourself. I just wanted to explain it to you a little bit here before we get in deeper into the test and the personality types.
Match.com came to me and said, why do you fall in love with one person rather than another? And I said, I don't know. I mean, nobody knows. I mean, we do tend to fall in love with people from the same socioeconomic background, same general level of intelligence, same general level of good looks, educational level, same religious and social and economic goals, reproductive goals. But you can walk into a room and everybody's from your background and same level of intelligence and good looks and education. And you don't fall in love with all of them.
All the time.
So,
Right.
but I began to think to myself, okay, maybe basic chemistry draws you naturally towards one person rather than another. I mean, people will say, well, we have chemistry or we
I
don't
always
have
want to know what
chemistry.
that means, but
So
you're like,
what does that mean?
what does it mean, Helen Fisher?
So, Emily, you're so cute.
You are
Well, so anyway, what I did is I went through the last 40 years of biological literature looking for any trait at all linked with any biological system. And there's a lot of systems in the brain, but most of them keep the eyes blinking or the heart beating. They're not linked with personality traits. But these four are the dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, and estrogen systems. So I listed the traits of each one of these basic brain systems and made a questionnaire for Match to see to what degree you express the traits in the dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, and estrogen system. Over 14 million people have now taken that questionnaire in 40 countries. And
14 million is quite...
People love questionnaires. They really do. They love
Back
questionnaires.
in Cosmo in the day, right? We all love the quizzes, but now
And
it's like,
because this one is the only one on earth that is built on basic brain circuitry. No, I mean, I know that's bragging, but the bottom line is...
you brag. Helen Fisher doesn't brag enough. Jesus. Okay.
Thank you.
Really?
So anyway, so here are the four traits that are linked with each of these systems. And then I was able to watch on Match in all these countries who's naturally drawn to whom. And that's where I had suddenly slipped into Mother Nature's kitchen and begun to figure out why him, why her, why you fall in love with one person rather than another. But anyway,
why him, why her, which is also, if you guys are interested in this at all and you want more, it is your book, Why Him, Why Her.
Yeah, and the questionnaire is in that.
The questionnaire, yeah.
And in much more detail. And how to get along with these people. But anyway, people who are very expressive of the dopamine system, I call explorers. Emily, you're one.
Yes.
I'm one. Risk-taking, novelty-seeking, curious, creative, spontaneous, energetic, mentally flexible, and idea generation. These are the people who come up with out-of-the-box ideas. And they're drawn to people like themselves. Explorers want explorers. They want somebody who's going to leap off the couch and, I don't know, go swimming in Central Park or go racing over to Lincoln Center at 10 minutes before something's going to start and just go in and plop down, whatever. They want to, take their backpack and go off to Laos and look in the woods or whatever. Anyway, the bottom line is the high serotonin. I call these people builders. They like the familiar. They're traditional, conventional. They follow the rules. They respect authority. They think concretely instead of theoretically. They like schedules and plans. They tend to be quite social, and they tend to be religious. Religiosity is actually in the serotonin system.
Yeah.
And these people are drawn to people like themselves. Traditional goes for
that makes sense.
And a good example is Mike Pence or Mitt Romney. I mean, they've married people who are very traditional, like themselves. They follow the rules. They're very structured.
Right.
They're concrete thinkers. They're principled.
Well, and taking your quiz, like, do you follow the rules? Like, do you? Like, never.
No.
Yeah, but
I mean, I follow the rules if it makes sense to me, but that's about it.
Exactly.
I'm good on the road. I follow the rules of the road.
Mostly, right.
Mostly. I love this.
Seatbelts
Oh,
still
Emily,
piss
you're
me off.
great.
Yeah.
And but anyway, so that type goes for that type. Highest testosterone goes for high estrogen and vice versa. So people who are very high testosterone tend to be analytical, logical, direct, decisive, tough-minded, skeptical, good at what we call rule-based systems, everything from engineering to computers to math to mechanics. Steve Jobs was a good example. I'm sure Bill Gates is.
Hillary Clinton, I heard
Hillary
you say.
Clinton
which
is.
Yeah, I heard, yeah.
I think she's high testosterone.
Yeah.
She was actually interested in going into the Marines.
Yeah.
I mean, she's tough-minded, that
Right,
girl.
right.
And she married a high estrogen.
That's what's amazing. But when I heard you say that Bill Clinton was probably high estrogen.
Yeah, well, these people are verbally skilled, people skills. He's
right.
whole world knows he can't
Negotiators.
stop negotiators. And directors are the high testosterone, and the negotiators are the high estrogen. And negotiators, they think broadly,
Right.
Contextually. And of course, that's you. Because
Yeah.
a person constantly interviewing people, constantly thinking outside the box, constantly looking for other ways of seeing a particular issue
Right.
is going to be high estrogen
Expressive,
person.
yeah.
Verbally skilled, people skills, can deal with ambiguity.
Yes. I thrive in ambiguity.
Very good, nurturing, trusting, diplomatic generally, and mentally flexible. So they go for their opposite.
So we're explorers, right? But you said would we only date other explorers though? Because to me, who's going to pay the, bill? Who's going to make sure we get place on time?
Right.
That's why I think maybe I've been more attracted to testosterone or the directors.
Well, the bottom line is we are all for. I mean, the problem with all
We
these
are
other
all for.
personality questionnaires is that they put you in one bucket or another. These are brain systems; they're not buckets. So, for example, my boyfriend and I are both high dopamine. That works fine. I am high estrogen, and he is high testosterone.
Oh, it's
so that
perfect.
works fine too. He is higher serotonin, and in this case, I mean, he's not that high, or I'd
Right.
have a hard time at it.
Right,
But
right.
but he's higher than I am, and so he plans everything, and it's sort of beautiful because I mean, yesterday we were driving, through Pennsylvania, and man, he knew where we were going. He knew how long it was going to take to get there. He got our hotel room. We got to the hotel too late, and we were looking forward to go to that restaurant. He immediately got on his phone and found another really nice place to go. All of that, if it had been you and I, we would have gotten out the door and started walking.
Exactly. No, exactly. This is why
And we
my
would have
ex
had a
and
good time,
It
too.
would have been fun. We would have
Yeah.
found someone that would invite us over for dinner, maybe.
Exactly.
We were gonna do
Whatever.
But this is the thing with my ex. I was saying this that he's a great guy, but I'm like, no one planned anything. Like I'm not a planner, and that I felt kind of like it was a thing. So I was like, how do I figure this out now ahead of time? I'd never been in that situation before because he kept saying, "Why aren't you planning stuff?" I'm like,
Oh,
all
wow.
my life I haven't been in this situation because I must have always been attracted to the
Wow.
person who plans.
Right.
So anyway, using this quiz,
And
for
he
example,
must have always been with somebody who plans.
I guess so because the
the
two of us
things
were
if I'm
sitting on the
gonna-
couch.
Oh wow!
Well, not a lot. I mean, he wanted to play video games. There was many things that didn't work. But I'm not sure. I love him. James always like, really, with the boyfriend. But it's just interesting to learn.
Yeah, but what's
love
what's really interesting is, and now, for example, he and I were going to the movies. This was months ago, and I said to him, I said, "Sweetheart, do you have any water in your backpack?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "Oh, great, we can drink it in the movie house." And he said, "No, we can't. You can't bring food or drink into a movie house. You got to buy it at the concession stand."
Oh God, the serotonin, right?
Serotonin. He had a moment of serotonin.
But you're like, no, we'll just put it in the backpack.
And
today.
I said, wow. But what's beautiful is, modern psychology is very good. It's all very good. But the bottom line is we are blaming everything these days on our mother and our childhood. Some of who we are is just biological. He wasn't stubborn about that water because of the way he grew up. It's who he is. It's who he was born. It's who he's going to be. And under those circumstances, you just have to do a workaround. You don't have to go to a psychiatrist's office for 15 years to wonder why he can't bring water into a movie house. It's just who he is. And then I said, oh, okay, we buy the water at the
Right.
concession stand. So the bottom line is, psychology has added a great deal about who we are and how to get along and et cetera. And it's all good. I mean, John Gottman is a brilliant man.
Yeah.
About don't show contempt, don't threaten divorce, listen actively. All very good. But the bottom line is get to know who the person also is biologically. And you
Okay.
can make a good relationship. Now, for example, my man, he has these crazy, wonderful ideas. I love them.
Right. Right.
And somebody else would be very impatient with all this, but it works perfectly for me. And it's who he is. He's not going to change.
Right. And people don't change either.
No, they don't. We can adapt.
If they want to.
But, could I ever make you uncurious? I don't think so.
No,
Could I
she
ever
doesn't
make
fly.
you I mean, if you and I went to Laos together, I mean, we'd plan a little bit. We'd figure out where we were staying.
Right.
But we wouldn't have a plan for what we're going to do every day for 3 weeks.
No.
We would not do that.
It would make me anxious. I'd be like, I'm already going to cancel day 3. But then
exactly.
Right.
We'd bring a little guidebook and we'd get, at breakfast, we'd figure out what we were doing.
Are we going to travel together,
morning.
Helen? I feel like we need to do something together. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I asked Dr. Helen Fisher about attachment styles and what they mean for our relationships. Can we go into like attachment styles a little bit? Because isn't it important to kind of know why you attach or anxious avoidant and things about that? I've just learned. I'm constantly like learning more about that too.
So am I. I'm really learning about that personally.
Fascinated by it.
Because
I was before you're 4 years old, and then how do you know if your mom wasn't looking into your eyes like you're everything to her? What if she kept leaving the room and then you feel not loved, or if you had abuse, or
I think so. I mean, all of that's very worthwhile, and there's no question about it. What I'm trying to do is add the second half of the puzzle. A huge number of other people are adding that half of the puzzle: your childhood, the traumas, who you are, how you expect the world to behave around you, what you're looking for in a partner. All of that is, I think, extremely valuable. But there's a second half of this puzzle, which is who you're built to be. Yeah. And a good 40 to 60% of who you are does come out of your biology. Some people they're homebodies. They're going to keep being homebodies unless they don't want to be a homebody. And then they marry somebody who wants to go out all the time, and there may be some friction in it. But I mean, I think you just have to know not only who you are, but who your partner and your friends are. Now, for example, I've got a girlfriend who's very high testosterone. I'm very high estrogen. So I just don't do conflict. I just don't do conflict. I can't cope with it. I just don't do it. So one day recently, I met her for lunch, and I walked in and she said, "Helen, where'd you get that purse?" And I said, "Well, I bought it in the street." And she said, It looks cheap."
I have friends like that.
And I said, "Marie." And she said, "Helen, I'm just trying to be honest with you. I'm trying to be helpful." But the high estrogen type takes it as an attack.
Yeah. Yes.
And when you understand that she's trying to be, I mean, I'm glad she said that.
Right.
But
like, I guess I'll
and one of the problems with the very high testosterone is that I don't fight back.
Right.
And then one time I did fight back, and I said, and when I fight back, it's perfectly fine with the high testosterone. They're used to that.
Right.
But then I go home and I say, "Why did I say that? Oh, I feel like such a heel.
Right.
Oh, I felt so aggressive."
Same.
Well, and so, I mean, it's hard it's hard to be somebody that you really are not.
No,
we can act out of character. It's just tiring. And in my case, it can just be, very socially anxious. Makes me socially anxious.
Same. It's so funny. I am totally conflict avoidant, and I guess, and I love what you're saying because a whole 16 light bulbs went off. Because in a way, it's like I have friends like that too, and I kind of like it. Was like, "No, Emily, you're not where." My friend came over. She must be high testosterone. She cleaned out my whole closet. She was helping me because I was too much stuff and clutter. And she's like, "This is cheap. You can't wear it again." And I was like, "Great." Like didn't make me upset because I'm trying to get rid of stuff. But she's and I appreciate her directness. And she literally was like, "No, these are done. These are done. Get rid of this." And we need people like that in our lives. But it's just funny thinking about the people we're attracted to. I mean, even as friends. But yeah, conflict. I've been like that forever.
It would be hard to travel with somebody like that for me.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
no, but you're right. I know what you're saying.
As long as you can appreciate her. And she can appreciate you. Does she appreciate you?
She does.
Well, that's important.
We love
because I've got friends who just think I'm weak because I'm sweet and I'm pleasant and I'm accommodating and I'm trying to level the playing field, and they take that as weakness.
Do they tell you? But when you're
they treat me that way.
Oh, But then don't you feel like that you don't want to be around those friends?
Yeah, it's not long because it's too tiring.
It is exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Friends who are just draining, the ones that are draining. I think you learn this as you get older. You start to shed and.
Well,
you just
women
feel it.
spend.
I can't even deal anymore if it's conflict.
Yeah.
Every time you call me, I'm anxious. I see the phone call. It's going to be stressful. No.
Yeah. Well, women
okay.
hold on to their friends, particularly the high estrogen type.
Right.
They're going to hold on to their, because they feel obliged. Mm-hmm. And
I
think women
drain on you.
I think women do an awful lot of things that they don't feel like doing.
Right. Well, it's true, but I guess as you learn that you don't have to do them anymore. But I guess if it's part of who you are, I don't know.
I haven't learned.
No, I'll always be a good friend, and I'm a a pleaser too. Yeah, I guess you're making me feel like it's okay. I'm a pleaser.
Yeah, me too. I'm horrible pleaser. Horrible pleaser.
Overplease. Yeah.
Placater.
Thank you. Yeah. My friend finally said to me last week, she said, "Thank you you just said thank you so much. I'm like, I'm so appreciative though. She goes, but after a while, it's diminishing returns. Like you could just say thank you once. And I was like,
that's interesting.
I was like,
see, because if
okay.
you said thank you all the time with me, I'd get it.
Right. I'm like, oh my God. Literally, I'm so grateful now to be sitting here. I mean, I mean it though.
Yeah.
I
I
wasn't
know,
doing
same with
it.
me.
So who knows?
No, I get it.
Raise, but
I
then
mean, if it was you and me, it was so funny. I was doing this years ago. I was doing this photography thing with the photographer, and it was a woman, and it was me, and we would get out of sync. So I would be moving when she was clicking, and I would say, "Oh, I'm sorry," and she'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I say, "Oh, I'm sorry," and she'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry," and finally, the guy who was her crew said, "Why are the two of you constantly so sorry?" And I just said, we get it. Just don't bother us.
Right, we're speaking each other's language. Right. Okay, let's talk about millennials and they get such a bad rap, right? But it's
They
the
get
sense
such
of like
a bad rap, and it
the
is
dating
so
apps
wrong.
and the whole thing.
It is so
wrong.
It is so wrong. I mean, first of all, these dating apps is just new technology. You have to learn how to use it. The only real algorithm is your own brain. You got to get out and meet the person. And these dating apps, they're not, as I say this at Match, and they know it, and everybody else does too. These are not dating sites. They're not dating apps. They're introducing apps. They're introducing sites. And what they are is they just give you an awful lot of people, and then you have to sift through it. The problem is the human brain is not built to even cope with so many choices. The brain has a sweet spot, apparently between 5 and 9 alternatives. And after that, you don't choose any. You just don't choose any. And I hear about these people who, had 30 dates in 30 days. No wonder. I mean, they're just in a complete dither. They're not going to meet anybody. And so I basically ended up saying, you just have to learn how to use this new system.
So
and
how do we do it then? I think,
Number one, after you've met 9 people, stop and get to know at least one of those people more. Because all the data show that the more you get to know somebody, the more you like them, and the more you think that they are like you. So stop
and
after
for men
9.
and for women?
Oh, yes, definitely for men and for women.
Okay.
Men fall in love faster than women do. Men fall in love more often than women do. Men are 2.5 times more likely to kill themselves when a relationship is over. It's exactly the same brain circuitry in men as women, but men just fall faster because they're so visual.
Yeah.
So there's 2 things. A, stop after you've met 9 people and get to know one of them better. And second, think of reasons to say yes. The brain is built to say no. We've got this huge brain region behind your forehead, in a brain region linked with what we call negativity bias. The brain is built to think of the negative. For example, let's say we all go to a party and everybody says, "Oh, Emily, you look so great," and this and that. And then somebody says, "Emily, have you lost too much weight?" Uh-huh. What are you going to remember? Just that.
Yeah, like, why is she talking about my weight? Yeah. I'm too skinny? Right.
So,
that's just because for survival techniques?
Yes,
right.
Absolutely. But, I mean, for millions of years, it was adaptive to remember who did not like you.
Right.
And it's good to know who does like you, but if you forget who doesn't like you, you could be dead. So we remember the negative. And so when you go out with somebody, on the first date, think of reasons to say yes. Overlook the fact that he's got brown shoes instead of black shoes, that he's wearing a T-shirt instead of a tie, whatever. I mean, if it's really obvious, then you got to get rid of it.
You're absolutely right. We're so picky. When people say they're so picky, then it's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, and women are pickier than men are for good Darwinian evolutionary reasons. Right. I mean, we're going to bear that baby, and that's going to be dangerous.
If the baby comes out in black shoes, then we're in trouble. But what about this whole thing about men decide who they're going to sleep with in 42 minutes or less, or on a date, or in 5 seconds?
Women can decide within 3 minutes.
Too, right?
Absolutely.
But what if we decided that? But you're saying even then go out with them for a second time, even if we're not sure or we don't think we would.
If it's a maybe, go out again. Absolutely.
Okay,
and one thing that's interesting about in one study I did with Match, 36% of singles had sex with somebody before the first date. And older people get all pushed out of shape about that. And they think, oh, wow, because in my day, because I'm older, we had the first date long before you kiss somebody.
Right.
These days, they start out with just friends. They're just friends.
Right.
And then they move into friends with benefits. You learn a lot between the sheets. You get to know somebody. Then after a period of time, you go and tell friends and family. And then you have the official first date.
Right.
And so people say, oh, they're not having a first date early on.
Yeah.
No, they're not. they're being more careful with the first date. And these days, a first date is expensive. I mean,
Right.
in my day, they picked me up after dinner and we played miniature golf or
Right.
went parking or whatever. But these days, it can cost you $200 if you're in LA or in New York.
Right.
So you really want to know who you're spending your money and your time on. What we're really seeing is the extension of what I call the pre-commitment stage, this long period of getting to know somebody before you tie the knot.
Which I think
and
makes sense.
I think that makes great sense. In fact, I did a study of 1,100 married people, and I said to them, one of the questions was, would you remarry the person you're currently married to? And 81% said yes. And I think that I've got 3 pieces of very solid data that the later you marry, the more likely you are to stay married. So what millennials are doing is they're getting their career in order, they're saving their money, they're sleeping around.
Yeah.
People sleep around.
I don't think you should get married before you're
They're
30.
learning a whole lot
Figure
about
it out.
themselves.
Yeah.
But they're also learning in this pre-commitment stage how to get rid of the ones they don't want. They're learning more about their own sexuality, about who they want, what kind of sense of humor, where they want to go, all kinds of things they're learning about before they wed.
Right.
And I honestly think that this long period of pre-commitment and the opportunity to meet people on the internet, so you don't have to make, foolish choices when you're
Yeah.
19. You can make a good choice when you're 29.
Yeah, I think
and have a whole
absolutely.
lot of years to get to know yourself and other people. And then, so people do tend to divorce. I mean, as an anthropologist in hunting and gathering societies,
Right.
they did tend to have 2 or 3 husbands during the course of their lives. So there's nothing new about divorce.
Right.
But I do think that the later we marry, all the data show that the later we marry, the more
It
likely
makes so
we are
much
to remain
sense.
married.
Because we don't know ourselves in our. I always say,
Right.
wait till you're 30. Like, that's just kind of what. I mean, if
Right.
you can, wait till you're 30
Right.
because you got to figure out who you are. You haven't made the decisions yet. You haven't been out there to date as many people to understand what might be
Exactly.
what might be right
useful.
for you.
And I love the fact that people are living together before they wed. I mean, you learn a lot with that too.
Yeah.
And that brings me to LAT.
Okay. Oh, we're going to circle back. LAT. What is LAT?
So it means living apart together. And
I-
I think it's largely for people who are not going to have children or don't want to have children now.
Okay.
And for example, my boyfriend came to me and he said his son went off to college. And so now we could spend a good deal of time together. And the first thing he said to me is he said, Helen, I want 2 or 3 nights to myself every week. Well, the first thing I did is I put my hand behind my back and I pulled it. I said, what do you really want? You want 4? You want 7?
Right.
I said, are we
Right.
breaking up?
Yeah.
He said, no, 2 to 3 nights a week. It's perfect for me. I have all these girlfriends. I
Yes,
have all these things I
same.
want to do at night. Sometimes I just want to go to sleep and read a book.
You don't want to have to be in bed with someone all the time. I understand that.
And so,
That's
and of course,
perfect.
I mean, what we're probably doing is sustaining this in this romantic tradition, but we're both older.
Right.
Why not?
It makes so
And,
much sense. You have your life set. You're set in your ways.
yeah. And he has his house and I have mine, and he'll be here tonight. He was not here last night,
Right.
which is perfectly fine.
You look forward to seeing him. You're not picking up his socks. He's not picking up yours. Like, it's
exactly.
just, I think that
He has his kitchen. He's got contents of his icebox or fridge,
Yeah.
and I mine. And what I really like about today is that we have alternatives.
Yes.
You can marry later. Women can have careers. You can get rid of things that don't work in order to make something that does work. Some of these people are polyamorous. Well, that's not for me. I couldn't do that. But
Right.
it's not a matter of morality. I don't have the personality for it.
Right.
I'd be too jealous. I don't want to share them. But the bottom line is there's people who are polyamorous.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean,
Everything.
gay,
Yeah.
the queer, the older people with LAT, et cetera, et cetera. I think that we have every reason to be able to build the kind of partnerships that we want.
So then why is
these
it still
days.
so hard then, you think, for some people to what about when we say, okay, going back to millennials who they don't want to catch feelings or they don't
Right.
want to.
That's a great term,
But
isn't
how
it?
do, yeah, I don't want to catch feels. I'd never heard that before you guys. I mean, it was like before like 5 years ago. But what is that? I mean, is that protective measure? Or do you think that that's some way? I like to think like they never, their friends aren't doing it. So they're not looking in. Like, I don't understand that. Because I caught feelings a lot in my 20s. I couldn't help it. I couldn't
Me
stop
neither.
it.
Yeah, no, I
So-
think they can't either. But they
I
don't
think
want to
they
get
don't know that they-
committed. They
Right.
don't want to get into that long-term commitment. Another thing that you just said is you had never heard that term, catching feelings. the millennials are adding all these words
I know.
to our vocabulary
I know.
that I really, really like. I mean, even this thing, define the relationship,
Oh,
DTR.
yeah.
Now, in my day, you went out with somebody maybe for months, if not years, and you really had no idea if they were going to ask you to marry. I mean,
Right.
nothing was
You'd be waiting.
defined.
Is there a ring in his pocket?
And
Whatever.
now it's defined. And in fact, I asked on Match, how long do you, when do you raise that issue of define the relationship? And I was astonished that they said after about 4 months. I wouldn't dare do it. That seems very early for me.
Oh, really?
But
Yeah.
they want to know what's going on. They really do. They this term being ghosted and
ghosted and benched and all
catching
the things.
feelings and all these things.
Yeah.
They're defining all this. I really think that's terrific.
Yeah, I think so too, because otherwise you're just like going in this abyss. And then
Exactly.
then also people also still make assumptions that, well, we slept together, so we must be committed, or we've gone on 3 dates and that person's probably not dating anyone, even though still they're not dating anyone else.
Right.
And like, don't make any assumptions about the person you've gone on 3 dates with. Like if
Right.
you haven't talked about it yet.
Right.
That's when you get jealous and all these things happen. So figure it out. And I think the sooner we realize that there's so many options, it's more accepted right now too to say to someone, I'm casually dating, I'm in friends with benefits, I want this
Right.
or that. And then you won't be spending a year with someone who doesn't want the same thing you
Exactly.
do. So it makes a lot more sense. Going back to this living apart together thing, I just want to talk about how that is such a great thing for even couples who are married and living together now
Right.
could still learn from that, because I've always had this hunch that like, when as a young, in my 20s, I thought that makes so much sense that to have that separation, or to kind of, when we talk about how women crave novelty and excitement and all the newness, it kind of makes sense to, even if you're even living together, how you can kind of still instill some of that separateness. And it just makes
Right.
sense. And I even
It's so
think-
interesting because, I do know people who are living together and own the property together and, own the apartment together, and they've lived. And very often, at least in New York, they'll have to even mesh their schedules because she's going out on Tuesday night with her girlfriends and she's going to the theater on Thursday with such and such. And what's he doing? And so they have to. I like that.
Yeah.
I like the fact that, what is it? As Khalil Gibran, the poet, said, he said, put some space in your togetherness.
Yes.
And
That's what
we
we
really
need.
weren't built for 24/7. I
We
mean, even
weren't.
in hunting and gathering societies, women would go off to another camp for even a few weeks. I mean, they traveled, and they didn't always travel together.
Yeah. I mean, the couples I know who have this, or like he travels or she travels for work every third week, it's great. Like they
Yeah.
really, like you get to miss someone.
Yeah.
I think that's
yes. I've
important.
got two girlfriends who, during the week, the husband works in Boston, and the wife works in New York,
Yeah.
and then they're together on the weekend.
Perfect.
So yeah.
It's like long distance, but they come. Yeah. I mean, I think that's how
I
it
think
works.
it's nice in the beginning. I don't know. I mean,
But with kids, it makes it a little more challenging.
Right.
Like we're talking like
Right.
when you have kids, it can be a lot
Well,
harder.
so it's so interesting because I was talking to a man who's recently married and has I think a child who's now something like 10 months old. And I talked to him about LAT, living apart together. And he said, oh, if I could have just one night every 2 weeks just to myself. I said, I wouldn't go out with other women. I just one night in a hotel room. And immediately my friend said, oh, I bet his wife wouldn't like that. And I thought to myself, maybe she would.
Probably would. Probably the best thing that ever happened. Maybe they switch. He's home every other
Exactly.
weekend. Someone gets a hotel room.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we need that. God, it makes so much
No,
sense.
we aren't built for all this. But the nice thing about these days is we can do that. I mean, you just have to be honest about it and work it out and build it up, build it together. And that's why my man was so great. I mean, I wouldn't have dared to say that. But
Right. We wouldn't have said that because
No.
it would have been like, right.
Yeah, because
But he needed the order at the serotonin.
yes. I never
build
thought of
it.
that, Emily, until
Yeah.
this second.
Yeah.
He needed the structure
He needs
of
to
it.
understand.
Well
like, is it
done.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, I'm upset. All your
I
strategies
not
make
even
sense.
thought of that. But he also had a lot of therapy because of very bad
Right.
partnership in his past. I had chalked it up to the bad partnership, but I think that
No.
you're right.
He needed boundaries.
needed the structure.
Like Tuesday nights, which night are you coming? Yeah. There you go.
Thank you,
Has
thank you,
nothing to do with
Emily.
the better. Oh my God, whatever I can do. When we come back, Dr. Helen Fisher and I explore what goes on in our bodies when we have an orgasm. Let's talk about orgasms, oxytocin, and attachment. So how orgasms bond us. Because I always say that on the show, but I feel like I've heard you talk about it in a way that how it's just important to just touch in other ways, just the importance of that
Right.
bonding
So,
and attachment.
you know, I mean, sex is good for you. It's good for you in many ways, and you can say all those ways better than I can. I mean, it's good for the skin, it's good for the lungs, it's good for the bladder, it's good for the sense of humor. I mean, it's just good for you if you're with the right person. And in fact, you know, any touching of the genitals drives up the dopamine system and can help you feel feelings of intense romantic love for the person. But with orgasm, there's a real flood of oxytocin and vasopressin. And those brain chemicals are linked with feelings of deep attachment to somebody. So orgasm is good. And in fact, when I ask Match, I do this annual study with Match called Singles in America. We do not poll the Match members. We poll the American public. So it's a representative sample of Americans based on the U.S. Census. And almost 70% of women do not regard it as good sex unless they have an orgasm. I mean, the old days where you're supposed to lie back and think of England are over.
Right, exactly.
Women want sexual gratification just as men do.
But can it get confusing though too? Just people who think that they can't be with several people because women are like, well, if I have an orgasm with them, I'm totally attached and I can't be with anyone else.
Well, I don't know. I never thought of that.
I read that, yeah.
But I mean, I do think that it brings you closer to somebody.
Yes.
I mean, that's one of the reasons that people, sex is not casual. Unless you're so drunk that you can't remember it, it's not casual.
Right.
I mean, things happen. You learn a great deal about a person. I mean, you learn, not only size and shape and motion, but whether they're kind, whether they can listen, whether they can accommodate, whether they want to please, whether they do have a sense of humor, whether they're, et cetera, et cetera. So you learn a lot between the sheets.
Yeah.
And I do think that once you get into bed with somebody, sex, triggers 5 of the 12 cranial nerves. I mean, you see them, you hear them, you smell them, you taste them, you feel them. I mean, the whole brain becomes activated by the whole experience. And of course, with orgasm is one of the most powerful feelings the human animal can have. So, it's good to have a partner that you like in bed. And, it's not the only part of a relationship that you can certainly have
right. Just to remind couples that like the touch is important too, just touching and orgasm.
Absolutely.
If you're not having couples like, oh, we don't need any more sex. Or usually there's one person that says that, but you do. You have to continue to connect or figure out
a way to do it. I mean, you're a sex therapist, but I would think that, I've always heard from sex therapists that that's one of the biggest problems when one individual wants more
that's
than
the
the
biggest
other.
problem here. Right.
Yeah. And, I'm not a therapist, but if I was with somebody, I would be tempted to say, listen, this is an important part of a relationship.
Yeah.
If you're not interested, maybe you should try taking some testosterone.
That's been amazing. The supplements.
Or understand that this is a meaningful part for this other person, and that you should try to accommodate. And the more sex you have, the more you want. The less you have, the less you want.
Right. But we forget after time, like we haven't had an orgasm for a while.
Right. So, no, and it's very good for the body and the mind. So, it's a very important. Now, there's some people who aren't terribly interested in sex, and they marry somebody who's also not terribly interested in sex, and that's fine.
That is
whatever. Probably not quite as healthy,
right?
But it's fine for them.
I'm obsessed with your personality types now. Are you the only one who pulled about these 4 types?
Yes, I'm the only one.
I think everyone. I'm literally all I can think about now. I'm putting everyone into personality types and why it means certain
it's
things.
An entirely new idea, and the business world really likes it. I'm making more and more speeches in business because, how do these different kinds of people innovate? How do they lead? How do you build a team?
Is it that same quiz that's on your site? The same one for businesses? We should figure that out.
Yeah, because this is not about love. This is about personality.
Well, right.
And so, for example, one of the problems in business is that people, if let's say you're building a team, you tend to choose teammates who are like yourself because you can understand them.
Right.
Now, if you and I were going to Laos, we might want to have a third person who gets the airline tickets.
Right.
We could rein them in.
Yeah.
We don't want an agenda for every single day we're there. So it's important to build a team with some of the people that you are not like. I am all for cultural diversity, but how about diversity of mind? Putting some people in your team who do not think the way you do. I mean, I've started this new company called Neurocolor, and we've got a second generation personality questionnaire, and we go into businesses and we train people on understanding these 4 styles of thinking and behaving, and how to build a team, and how you want to be talked to. I don't like to be talked. I don't like it when the testosterone tells me, "Where'd you get that purse?"
Yeah,
I don't. Or that shirt is cheap. Get rid of it. I mean, I can do it. But it's tiring for me. I'm trying to be sweet and smile and
But you might need that guy to talk to your salespeople.
Exactly.
But not you.
The co-founder and I, his name is Dave Labno, and he's very high testosterone. I'm very high estrogen. There's a little clash there at times, but we're both very high dopamine. We need a high serotonin person. We need the builder. And there's times that we don't know what to do. And so we will call. We've got another 2 people in the company who are very high serotonin. And we call them and ask them, what would you do under this circumstance? What do you think about this? Because we are not going to see it the way a high serotonin builder would see it. It's very valuable to have people around who can do the things that you don't do, and also get them in the right job.
Yeah.
I was once out at Visa, the credit card company, and everybody had taken my personality questionnaire, and I could see that there was this one woman took my personality questionnaire. She was the head of the accounting department, a big, big part of Visa. But on my questionnaire, she was all explorer, all high dopamine. And of course, in accounting, you're a bean counter. I mean, it's high serotonin. And it's a very different kind of task.
Yeah.
And so I pulled her aside because I didn't want to embarrass her in front of her colleagues and everything. I said, tell me, which is more the real you, the you at work or the you outside of work? And she said, outside of work, which was my questionnaire showed. And she said, work is very tiring. And it's because she's having to fit herself into a role that she doesn't naturally play.
But did she like it? Or was she like, oh, thank you, I wanted to have a therapy
I didn't.
session. But it's just interesting to look at that.
Yeah.
The people getting yourself in wrong places, to kind of go towards where your skills are.
That would be the leaders of the company, to try and put people where they will do their best. And people will do their best. And now, for example, with innovation, I mean, you are going to think outside the box and come up with a new idea, a better mousetrap.
Right.
Yeah, that's what you're going to do. But you want a nice high serotonin person to create the process, innovate a new process for how it's done. That's going to make you too impatient.
Right.
You're going to want a high tech guy to build the whatever it is.
Testosterone,
and then you're going to want a high estrogen, which is also you, who to sell it, to explain it, to advertise it, to et cetera, et cetera. So just getting people in the right place is very valuable.
I'm so glad businesses are picking this up, and people dating. Like before you go on a date, I mean, people have what about people have Myers-Briggs and stuff on their personality, but not everyone takes it. Not everyone gets it. It's a little more.
Well, one of the things that's very hard to remember.
Yeah,
I am an ITP. It's very difficult to remember. It's much easier to remember explorer, builder.
It's really smart.
Good on you director, negotiator. So it's hard to remember, but also it puts you in buckets. And the bottom line is, you can act out of character. I can do serotonin. I mean, I pay my bills every month. I do get my schedule under control, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't feel like doing it.
Right, ever.
Ever.
Right.
And, I mean, what takes my boyfriend 2 seconds to go onto the internet to buy an airplane ticket, I'll wait days before I make the call.
Yeah, days. Someone has to come sit next to me on my couch. My sister, I'm like, okay, we're doing it now.
I know. It's
anxiety.
Awful.
Yeah. But that's just who I am. I'm not going to change it.
No.
It feels so much better.
Yeah.
Just embracing it.
Yeah.
It's so funny. And then dating and then realizing what's important to you, and then finding people who can kind of fulfill that part of you.
I mean, I had one man that I've hung around with for years. I mean, we're just friends. I've probably known him for 15 years. We have gone to the same restaurant for 15 years. And he always wants to go. He's just a high serotonin guy. And I thought to myself, over these past years, he would never be a lover. I mean, he's barely been to Europe. He just likes to stay home. He likes the steady.
And that's biology, truly. It's not anything about your parents raised you.
It's so interesting. When my book on this came out, Why Him, Why Her, my editor for the book called me up. He had just read the first draft. He said, Helen, I finally understand my son.
Yeah.
And my editor was very high explorer, dopamine, risk-taking, novelty-seeking, curious, creative, spontaneous, energetic. But his son was the high serotonin. He wanted to stay home and he was a cautious kid. He didn't want to go out on all these adventures that his father wanted to go on. And he said, I love my son, but I never understood him until now.
Right. You just get it that way. Okay. That makes, but who knows if it's because of the way he raised him or if it's because.
Oh, it's
we don't
because
know.
I think he's a high serotonin kid.
Yeah, just how it
biology. I mean,
Biology
I've got
makes sense. Did you measure their brain? You measure their brains, right?
Yes, I did. And that's why this is my questionnaire is so unusual.
Right.
I got all the data from looking at all the brain literature to make the questionnaire, but then I put two groups of people who had taken the questionnaire into the brain scanner to prove that what I was measuring with my questionnaire actually corresponded with what was in the brain. So if I were to put you into my machine, first I'd give you the questionnaire. You score very high on my dopamine scale, the Explorer. And then when I looked at your brain, I'd see a lot of activity in the whole dopamine pathway. I would also see activity in the brain region for empathy because that's estrogen, and with verbal skills because that's estrogen. So I would be able to see your brain and see, yes, that's why it's different from the Myers-Briggs and from all the other.
No, I like
Myers-Briggs actually is quite right in some ways, but they don't know it. And for example, I don't know how much you know about the Myers-Briggs.
A little bit, yeah.
When they're measuring the degree to which you are feeling versus thinking,
right.
What they're really measuring, they don't know it, but they're really measuring the traits of the testosterone versus estrogen system. And when they're the perceiving versus judging, P versus J, they're really measuring the traits of the dopamine versus the serotonin system. Once again, they don't know it, but that's what they're doing.
You simplified it, that it sounds like.
What I did is I got the biology to it. But then they put you in a bucket. You're either perceiving or judging. They got one thing wrong.
Right.
And in fact, everybody's gotten one thing wrong, I think. I've never written about this, but I do measure it in my neurocolor questionnaire.
What they get wrong?
I don't think anybody in business or in psychology or layman actually understand extroversion versus introversion. I think that Isabel Myers had it right, of Myers and Briggs, in that it's where you get your energy. Now, I'm an introvert. I get my energy from being alone. But if I go into a party, I'm talkative, I'm bluffing, I can be the life of the party, et cetera, et cetera. And what they do is they confuse introverts with sort of wallflowers and extroverts with sort of the life of the party. But I think they're two separate scales. The degree to which you get your energy, which is introversion versus extroversion, and a whole second scale, which is outgoing versus reserved.
Yeah,
now,
that makes so much sense.
I am an outgoing introvert.
Yeah, this is a whole new thing. I think that makes so much sense.
And my brain scanning partner is a reserved extrovert. She has to have people around. There are people constantly going in and out of her house. There's dogs, there's cats, there's people, there's you name it, there's people. But she's reserved around people.
That's so interesting. That makes sense. It's too simple to say introvert because I love being alone, but I'm an extrovert. But yeah, I need my alone time because I'm around people all the time. But I get energy from people, I think.
Yeah. And Myers-Briggs have that wrong. And I think the other thing that they've got wrong is putting you in a bucket because we're all a combination of all of them. It's the matter of degree. Now, my boyfriend is particularly high on the dopamine and the testosterone skills, but he's got some serotonin in him. Myers-Briggs would not pick that up.
Oh, okay.
And that serotonin in him has been valuable. I mean, he makes the plans. He actually likes it. I keep on apologizing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I never get us the hotel room. I never do this.
He likes it, though. He needs to know that it's happening, that you have a place to go. Maybe he enjoys looking at it. I mean, my mom has had that have a very similar, like he loves the planning and doing it. So he appreciates it. I want to talk to you about rejection.
Yeah.
Because you talk about
painful.
The most painful. You say it's the most painful experience a human can endure, and I agree. Can you talk about that a little bit? The phases of rejection and what happens in romantic love and getting rejected.
So after I put my first group of people into the brain scanner who were happily in love, and that got a lot of press, and I said to them, Helen, that's really not very important. What's really important is to find out what happens when you've been rejected in love. I mean, that's when people murder or commit suicide or slip into clinical depression or stalk. I mean, if I'm going to make any contribution on this planet, it's going to be among people who are rejected in love. So we put 15 people into the scanner, and we found activity in a lot of brain regions. Among them, 3 brain regions linked with craving, the basic brain region linked with addiction. It's an addiction.
Yeah, you become addicted to you obsess, right?
And and certainly also a brain region linked with feelings of intense romantic love. I mean, you don't stop loving somebody because they dumped you. In fact, you can love them more.
Right.
And a brain region linked with feelings of deep attachment, of course, and a brain region linked with physical pain. Not only the anxiety that goes along with physical pain, but a brain region that also becomes active when you have tooth pain. But you go to the dentist, the tooth pain's gone, a week later you've forgotten it. You don't forget it somebody a week after they've dumped you. It can go on for months or years.
That's
So basically
amazing to me.
this, I know. When I was writing my book on that, why we love, I thought to myself, why do we go through this? I mean, why isn't it easier to break up? I mean, everybody gets dumped. And I thought to myself, well, look at what you're losing. I mean, you're not only losing your daily routines, your daily habits, somebody to make love to and laugh with, but you could be losing your children or the dog or the house and economic problems, and where do you go at Christmas or Hanukkah or wherever? I mean, you lose a great deal.
Too, and company. You
absolutely, you can lose friends, you can lose neighbors, you can lose a lot. But what you're really losing is a reproductive partner. You've lost your opportunity to send your DNA on with this individual, and if you've already had children with the person, you're losing a parent.
Right. What if you don't want
parenting.
children? What if you're older and you still hurts?
It always hurts. It always hurts. I mean, it always hurts. It always is so painful. But it is a process. I mean, psychiatrists say, this is not my work, psychiatrists say that, the first thing is the protest stage. You just try to win the person back. Mm-hmm. You can try to seduce, you can try to insult them. You walk in and say, I'll never see you again. You have a whole big drama. You walk out. 10 minutes later, you're back to do it again.
Right.
It's an obsession. And you're trying to win the person back. You can seduce. You can try and make them jealous. You can do a lot of things. And then after a while, you just flat out give up. And that's the second stage. You move from protest to resignation. And then you sort of slump onto the bed and you just lie there and you cry, or you drink too much, you drive too fast, you hole up and watch TV. And after a while, that begins to fade and you move into recovery. Right. So it really is a whole pattern. But, men and women do it somewhat differently. Mm-hmm. Women try to negotiate a great deal, whereas men will try to make a woman jealous or go out and get another relationship almost immediately to try to make the person jealous. So they'll do it somewhat differently. But
is it true you think that men do it like that, but then they feel it later?
I saw just as much sorrow in the men that I put into the brain scanner as the women. They don't talk about it as much. Women talk about it too much.
I agree.
And what they're doing then is re-traumatize. I mean, you do want to talk about it to a point, but after a while, you need to stop talking about it, because every time you raise the issue again with friends and family, you're re-traumatizing yourself. You're reliving it at some point. And that happened to me once with this guy. I mean, it was ridiculous. He was constantly leaving me. And finally, I said to my girlfriends, I'm not going to talk about it anymore, because I'm just re-traumatizing myself.
Right. It's so helpful, right?
Yeah.
And then you heal. Time does heal all wounds. I guess it is true. But would you think
we've been able to prove that, actually? These rejected people, the longer you get away from the moment of initial rejection, the less activity there is in a brain region linked with feelings of attachment. So we've been able to prove that in the brain, time does heal. But if women talk about it too much, men often don't talk about it enough.
Right.
And so they don't process it. And there was this one guy, you've got to sort of build a story that you can then get rid of. And there was this one guy that left me. I could not figure out why he left. I could not figure it out. And I finally said to myself, and I was never going to know because he was gone. So I finally said to myself, Helen, make it up. Just make up your story. Make up the story of why you left or what went wrong, what you did, make it up. And so that you can, once you get a story, you can throw the story out. Wow. You can bury the story.
And that worked. So, you just think about it like, this is what happened.
To this day, I don't know why I left, but I got my story.
We'll never know either. Like, even because that's the thing about the apps.
You probably wouldn't even tell me.
Right. He just disappeared, kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, but
or make it up.
Yeah. But we make up so many stories in our head about things too. Like even on the apps now, we get more rejected. Or we had a great date and they ghosted. Yeah. Like you're never going to know anyway. And if you spend an hour, 2 hours with someone, and you've spent 10 days obsessing about it. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Make a point, just move on. You got to move on
Right,
from it.
got to move on.
The rejection
and
is
make
still hard,
something
though.
up.
It makes sense, though, why it's so hard.
You
Yeah,
know,
make it up.
Make it up. I
You
mean,
got that
that's
for
what
the
I
sex.
would do. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist or
Right.
therapist like you are, but you know, if I was on the internet and I had a really wonderful date with somebody or 2 wonderful dates with somebody, and geez, I thought it was great, and then they said to me, "Well, I'll call you next week," and then they never do. I would think I mean, if you really had no idea, I don't know. I mean, just off the top of my head, I guess I would say, well, maybe his girlfriend came back. Maybe
Exactly.
maybe it doesn't have to do with me.
It doesn't have to do with
You
you, is what I
know?
tell people all the time. First of all, you'll never know, but just assume it has nothing to do with you. How could it after 1 date, 2 dates anyway, or if it does,
Yeah.
you'll never know.
Yeah, never
It's
know.
much healthier, though, not to beat yourself up and go to the negative.
Exactly.
Which is what we're wired to do.
Right, exactly. People would say, well, love is dead. You can't kill love. It's a brain system. It evolved over 4 million years ago. It's going to be with us as long as we survive as a species. 4 million years from now, it's like the fear system or the hope system. There's a basic brain system we will always love.
Well, I love that you've made your life work out of studying love. It's been so helpful for so many people, including myself.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank
Me
you.
too.
Thank you, Dr. Helen Fisher. That's it for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Sex with Emily. Be sure to like, subscribe, and give us a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share this with a friend or a partner. Believe me, if you got something out of this, they will too. We release 2 to 3 episodes a week. Find me on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. It's all at Sex with Emily. If you want to ask me a question about sex, dating, or relationships, you can email me feedback@sexwithemily.com or sexwithemily.com/askemily. And check out my website. We have so many articles on there helping you better sex. And you can check out our guides at sexwithemily.com/guides for free guides that will give you expansive tips and activities. Sign up for our weekly emails because, hey, I've been told I give really good emails. Was it good for you? Email me feedback@sexwithemily.com.